This video is going to focus on the different types of stream channels that we find. And a stream channel is just what kind of material makes up the bottom or the stream bed. For the most part, stream flow, or all of the water and sediment that is moving through the stream, is confined to the channel. And the two major types of stream channels are going to be dependent on what kind of material makes up the bottom of the stream. We're going to have some that are made out of solid rock, and we call these bedrock channels. But others, we see that the bottom of the stream is composed of loose, unconsolidated sediment that's going to be easily moved around, like we see with the image on the right. But starting off with our bedrock channels, again, these are the streams that are directly on top of solid rock, not loose sediment. We're going to see that these bedrock channels are most common in our headwater regions and our mountainous regions with really steep gradients. And these bedrock channels, even though they're solid rock, we're going to see some very large coarse particles that we call boulders, as you can see in the image. But because we have very quickly moving water and a lot of boulders, we're going to see lots of waterfalls and whitewater rapids develop in these regions. But we're going to see that the channel, the stream itself, is controlled by the geology. The water is only going to be able to move over these rocks, so it's not going to be able to change the shape or the size of the river very easily. On the other hand, the second major type of channel we have are alluvial channels. And these are the ones where the bottom are made out of loose, unconsolidated sediment. So unlike a bedrock channel where the water can only move through the solid rock, with these alluvial channels, the water is going to be able to move around, erode, transport, and redeposit sediment as it flows through the region. And we're going to see that the shape of these channels is going to be controlled mainly by the sediment size and a little bit by the gradient and the amount of water flowing through the stream. But with our alluvial channels, we're going to have two different types depending on how much water is moving throughout the year. And these two common types are called meandering channels. These are going to be ones that curve back and forth like the upper image. And then we're also going to have braided channels that remind me of braiding hair, which we see at the bottom image. In areas where the stream flows throughout the entire year, we're going to have a meandering channel develop. And these are rivers that have really curvy bends to them. And these curvy bends are called meanders. With this, I generally think of like the Mississippi River. They're generally very wide rivers that are carrying a very high suspended load, meaning that they're just carrying a lot of fine-grained sediment inside of it. But with these, we see that depending on where we are in the meander or the curve in the stream, it's going to cause the water to either hit one side or flow past another side without touching it. So we're going to see that on the outside of the curve, or on the outside of the meander, this is the side of the stream where erosion is going to happen. Because on the outside of the meander, this is where the water is going to hit the side of the stream as it's flowing downwards. Because water is hitting the side, it's going to erode away that sediment. But if we look at the inside of our stream, here the water is simply going to flow past it. It's never going to touch the inside of that bend. So because the water isn't touching it, it's losing energy, and it's going to start depositing the sediment in this area. And we call this inner part the point bar, where sediment is being deposited on the inside of the curve. But we see that these meanders in a stream change their size and location over time. Because one side of the bend is being eroded and the other side is being deposited, we see that they become curvier and curvier over time. But eventually we might see that the stream becomes too curvy and it's going to cut itself off, which we can see in this image of the Green River on the left-hand side. The river used to flow through this long curve in the direction, but the water has eventually cut itself off. It will now just simply flow this direction, and it's create a cut-off meander. We have an entire curve of the river that's been cut off, but eventually that cut-off meander is going to be 100% cut off from the stream. It's no longer going to have water flowing through it. Instead, it's going to be a stagnant lake that we call an oxbow lake. It's called an oxbow lake because it's shaped like a horseshoe, which way back in the day we used to call oxbow. But the other type of alluvial channel is very different from a meandering channel, and this is called a braided channel. Usually this happens in areas where the amount of rainfall is variable. It's like a desert region. And the water is going to move through depending on where and how large or how small the sediment is. So in these braided channels, the stream flow is going to be controlled by basically where the sediment is piled and how coarse that sediment is. We see overall that the channel of a braided channel is a lot wider, but the amount of water at the surface is a lot less than a meandering channel. And we commonly see these a lot at glaciers, where they're melting and that melt water is periodically coming off the ice.